Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Elevenses. This is very exciting for me because I've been a long-time fan, but first-time presenter. So welcome. My name is Matt Lloyd. I work as a comms planning director here at Google. And today I am here to talk to you in the first of a series of two presentations that we're going to give around the travel industry. So this first one, both presentations are looking specifically at the peaks travel period in travel. And this first presentation that I'm going to give today is talking about how we can work with you and use our products to help you build brand consideration before you get into the peaks season. And the second presentation, which will be delivered in Elevenses on the 12th of December, we'll be talking about some of the search trends we have observed which go on during the peaks period. So let's start thinking about peaks and more specifically, let's start thinking about brand consideration. So before I talk specifically about peaks and how you can work with our products, I wanted to talk a little bit about what goes on in the travel sector as we know it. And one of the first things that we're aware about is there is a real lack of loyalty that exists within the travel sector. So we recently interviewed some people who have travelled to understand a little bit more about the booking process and how they go about booking a holiday. And what we found, unsurprisingly really, is that 82% of people said they had not made any decision at all about who to book with when they started to plan a trip. And this isn't really that surprising because actually the biggest decision people make with regards to non-work travel is always going to be about destination. So you're always going to be kind of broadly thinking about the destination you want first. And with the possible exception of Disney World, no brand currently really has a monopoly on any destination. So as people focus on the destination and the logistics, once they get the destination and they start to think about the logistics, that's really when the brands start to come in. But they are very much a sort of secondary consideration when it comes to thinking about holidays and booking them. And that is especially true, really, when we start to think about how the industry has changed. And there is a lot more options that are available to people when it comes to thinking about how they book and how they think about researching a holiday. So as the industry has changed, the way people book and research travel has changed. And we see that people are considering a broader range of brands. So we recently partnered with McKinsey and Vertigo, an analytics company that has a US online presence. And we wanted to do a travel shopper panel to understand how the travel journey is evolving over time. The data is kind of drawn out of actual consumer behaviour, and we wanted to look at their journeys from inspiration to booking over multiple devices. And this was done multiple devices over multiple sessions and spread out in some cases over days and even months. And what we wanted to see was just look at the average number of brands that people would engage with when booking something, just one component of a holiday, which in this case was just booking a hotel. And what we've seen, actually, even if you go back to 2017, people were considering or engaging with 5 brands. In a year, that has increased to over 40%. So it's increased from 5 brands to 7 brands. So travellers, actually, when they're thinking about booking any kind of component to a holiday or a trip or the whole package, have more choices than they have ever had before. There are more hotel brands, there are more online travel agents, there is a rising crop of meta search platforms, and we see the impact this has in our data, but we also see it in the impact that people are having when it comes to considering brands. And actually what it means is that brands, as they grow, there is a broader set of brands that you need to be part of, but you need to make sure that as the kind of brand space becomes more congested, that your brand is front of mind for people for when it comes to booking a holiday. And as we've kind of seen, that space is becoming a lot more congested and it's becoming harder to differentiate in that space. Now, what is interesting is certainly when we look at our own search data and when we look at what is going on during peaks, although at the start of the process, before people have started kind of even thinking about destination, they will think of destination first. As soon as they've started to kind of narrow down where they're getting to a destination, then clearly brand searches do play an important part. And actually what we see in our own research is that brands overall account for 1 in 4 searches that we see going on around travel. And there are specific peaks around that, around the kind of peak travel period. But actually brand is an incredibly important part when it comes to people thinking about the actual planning and the implementation of the holiday and how they make that happen. So the pre-stage, when they're thinking about destination, it's all about the destination. But as soon as the destination is there, they are thinking about brand. And that is why it's so incredibly important that you need to make sure that your brand is front of mind before people are kind of entering into the peak period. Because once they're into that period, they've kind of whittled down to about 5 or 7 brands that they'll be potentially looking at. So what we want to look at and clearly understand is how can our platforms certainly help you to work with your clients to help make sure they're delivering the best front of mind awareness that they can. And when it comes to kind of awareness and thinking about how you build brand awareness and consideration for your brand, it is going to be no surprise to anyone, but we still know that the best way really to build that kind of front of mind brand awareness and consideration is around use of video content. And that is content across any platform at all, whether that be TV program, whether that be a social feed on a mobile, or whether it be something watched on a tablet. So any kind of video content, wherever it is watched, is clearly still the most potent form of a brand kind of building that you can do. But what we are kind of seeing, and this is research that was brought to us from Thinkbox, is that whilst people are still watching an awful lot of video content, the way they're watching is changing, and the impact it is having on how you build a brand is clearly changing as well. So TV still remains a dominant part of the media day, but it is beginning to face increasing competition from other platforms as our viewing behaviours continue to change. So whilst we adopt new viewing behaviours, i.e. we will binge watch a box set, or we will watch clips sent from friends, or we will use videos to help us learn new skills, we're still going to remain the habits of old. So we'll still sit and watch our favourite soap operas or our dramas or our favourite sports fixtures. The challenge is that there's clearly only a finite amount of time of the day. So the latest research we see from Thinkbox shows that video consumption of some sort, whatever platform it will be across, still occupies 4 hours and 37 minutes a day across all adults. So if you look at all adults, it's 4 hours and 37 minutes a day. As we can see, though, from this chart, whilst TV is still dominant, it is increasingly fragmented in terms of how that day is broken up and how people watch and consume different video. That does throw up a challenge in terms of when you think about brand building and how you want to reach a kind of mass audience in the right kind of environment. And one of the other kind of trends we have seen and witnessed going on is we wanted to look at 2 different data sources. The first one is just overall TV viewing. So we looked at all adults viewing and looked at BARB data in the last 8 years. So this is basically looking from 2009 through to 2017. And in that time, if you look at the viewing habits of all adults as a whole, the amount of time that they are viewing has dropped by 20%. We then wanted to understand what's going on in terms of the investment into that channel. So we looked at ubiquity data to understand how much money the travel industry was investing. And across that same period, so across that same 8-year period, the amount of investment has increased by the travel industry by 100%. So you're kind of seeing a bit of a conflict really going on here in terms of there is definitely less eyeballs being delivered in TV. TV is still a very dominant media, but it's definitely delivering less eyeballs. But at the same time, the amount of investment across that period from the travel industry has gone up. So you're basically seeing more money trying to chase less eyeballs. And the challenge you're kind of facing is, where do you find those eyeballs? Where is the best way of kind of maintaining and continuing to deliver the coverage you need to deliver to make sure that you are still allowing your brand to be front of mind during key retail and peak periods. So really, when you think about it, it's no longer, when it comes to thinking about planning broadcast campaigns, it is no longer just about thinking about how you deliver scale. It is also thinking about how you make sure you deliver scale, but also delivering scale in a place that holds and attracts an audience. Because as we see, as our media day becomes more fragmented, we increasingly see that people completing multiple tasks at any one time. And actually, the research will always show that when you're completing multiple tasks, it's not so much as a first screen and a second screen, it's kind of not necessarily concentrating or focusing on either screen. So what we are really kind of looking for in this kind of day and age, is how you find media which is really kind of attracting and holding people's attention. And this is clearly where YouTube comes into its own in terms of the way that it will deliver coverage and deliver scale. Because what we have seen from our own research is that, unsurprisingly, people will go to the UK's largest video platform to watch video. And they are doing that very consciously to watch the stuff they want to watch. So when we see people watching video, most of the viewing now will be done, people will turn phones horizontally and you'll see people focus on the video that is being watched. 90%, 95% of all of the video that we can play out will be played, will be fully viewable and will be played with audio, both of which, again, unsurprisingly, when you play out one of your ads with video and sound, the results when it comes to brand awareness and recall tend to be a lot higher than when you don't. So actually what you're seeing with YouTube is a platform where people are actively going to watch video, and therefore we are able to deliver a very attentive reach. And it is a perfect complement to any kind of broadcast campaigns that you are planning to build front of mind awareness during peak campaigns. So how do we go about using YouTube to effectively build coverage for your target audience? So there's three things that we wanted to look at to think about how you do this. The first thing is how you work with us around our targeting product and what would be the right targeting products to use and how they would work. Second thing is about specific format, what formats we would be using and what format we would recommend using. And then the third is how we think about planning an effective coverage rate on YouTube. So it's clearly important to make sure we set up the right measurement and KPIs. And when it comes to this part of the campaign, it should all be about how you deliver coverage and awareness against your target audience. And they should be your key metrics that you should be looking at when it comes to measuring the campaign and thinking about how the campaign works. So, firstly, let's start on how we think about targeting. So, affinity audiences. So we would recommend to build awareness, the broadest awareness of your brand across a platform, we would recommend using our affinity audiences. So the way that we build our affinity audiences is across all of our platforms, we will collect all of the relevant data to show when people are either browsing or looking or interested potentially in any kind of holiday information. So that will go across not only search and YouTube, but also across maps. It will also go across Chrome. It will also go across Play Store. So millions of different signals used every day to allow us to craft a broad audience based on their long-term interests. And what we can do is what you're defining is you're defining the broadest possible audience who might be interested in a holiday. So not only are you allowing YouTube to give you an attentive audience, but you're also defining the audiences most likely to be thinking about booking a holiday. So that will be based on their browsing behavior. And these are not yet in-market audiences. We're not looking to try and convert people here. We are just looking for an opportunity to raise awareness. So these are people who are currently kind of browsing travel websites, looking for information and thinking about where they might be going. They may be looking at YouTube, for example, for different inspirations. So looking at different like top 10 beach ideas or kind of looking for inspiration in that space. Or they may have actually downloaded a travel app recently, for example, and maybe using that. So using lots of different signals to define and think about how we create an affinity audience. And that would be the recommended audience we would use for this part of the campaign in terms of how to build brand awareness. Then the second thing we would say is to use one of the newly developed TrueView products we have, which is TrueView for Reach. Now, we continue to develop our different ad products across platforms to help advertisers deliver the most effective solutions. And TrueView for Reach has been specifically developed to optimize reach against YouTube, ensuring the campaign reaches as much of your designated audience as cost effectively as possible. So in this case, how we reach an affinity audience. The algorithm is optimized to deliver the broadest reach possible, and it identifies people within your target set who are most likely to watch your ad. Then it will be clearly reaching people, as stated before, in an environment where the ad is most likely to be viewed and heard by a person. So it'll be adhering to our 95% viewability and audibility results. The product also allows for the campaign to be managed with an industry standard CPM bidding and billing. So it makes it an easy campaign for you to manage and to take care of. And it allows advertisers, therefore, to reach their target audience cost effectively in an environment where people have gone to watch videos. So when we think, okay, so we'll be using Affinity Audiences, and we'd recommend using TrueView for reach. So make sure you're targeting the most relevant audience and the most scaled audience you can, and using a product which is designed to reach as many of that audience as cost effectively as possible. The final element that we would add into that is how do we think about going and planning that campaign. So one of the things that we wanted to start to look at is when it comes to planning this part of the campaign, for us, it is all about how you think about delivering effective coverage. So we wanted to look at what effective coverage would look like on YouTube. So rather than using our extra reach tool and understanding how it might work with other platforms, wanted to just exclusively look like what coverage would look like on YouTube and think about how you might set an effective coverage target. So an effective coverage target, for any of the TV buyers in the room, will fully be aware of what an effective coverage target is. But the idea here is to look at how YouTube builds coverage, and to think about, okay, if we want to optimize coverage at a certain level, where's the point where we are no longer delivering coverage at an effective level and we are just adding frequency? Because although frequency is clearly important, what you really want to be doing is just maximizing your coverage. So at which point is it that that curve hits a diminishing point of return? So when we look at our planning tools and think about targeting affinity audiences between November and December, what we really see is we would estimate a coverage target of 20% of the target audience. And at that point, when you start to hit the 20% point, is a point where you start to reach a diminishing point of return. So the recommendation from us would be to work with your teams to understand what would be the effective coverage point for yourselves. Our recommendation would be around 20%, to set an effective coverage target of 20% for the campaign, and then to run that across the campaign periods to make sure you are effectively reaching the people you want to reach with the coverage you want to reach at a frequency which is right for the campaign. And then to complement and to build on working with YouTube, we would also recommend adding in a display element to the campaign as well. So using the similar targeting or same targeting, so targeting affinity audiences across the display network, and using the expandable video MPUs. So you're only going to pay when someone clicks to expand. So again, you've got a highly addressable and format which cannot clearly be tracked, and a CPM which will allow you to manage your campaign at an industry standard in an easy bidding system. And this will allow you to add supplementary coverage to your campaign, and also to effectively reach same audience with a cost-effective CPM. So that would be our recommendation. In terms of next steps and how you should implement all of this, would suggest talking to your Google rep and talk to them very much about how you would plan an effective campaign weight across both YouTube and display, and how they can work with you to effectively set up the affinity audiences and make sure you're targeting the right people and using the right products to reach them. And then again, agree the right campaign KPIs. And for this part of the campaign, it is very much clearly how you can think about using our brand lift surveys to both track brand awareness and consideration, which should be the key metrics of the campaign, because ultimately this is about how you're delivering effective front of mind awareness to your audiences. But then also alongside that, how you can think about setting other KPIs which you may wish to judge a campaign by, which is kind of the overall reach, and then thinking about view rates and view rates and cost per view. So thank you very much. Thank you for all your attention. Like I say, we will be back in 2 or 3 weeks' time on the 12th of December to present the second follow-up to this, which will be talking more about search and the search trends we have seen around peaks travel. But in the meantime, good luck with planning your coverage campaign for peaks. I hope all goes well. And once planned, well, clearly make sure you enjoy a good holiday. Thank you very much for listening.